Welcome to another episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast with your hosts, Sean Sorrentino and Aaron Paulette.
Welcome to episode 107 of the GunBlog VarietyCast. How are you doing, Aaron?
Haven't you heard about the killer hurricane that's coming right for us and will end all life in Florida as we know it?
Yeah, actually I have. It was nice knowing you, Aaron. I guess we're going to have Weird do next week's podcast?
I guess so. Apparently, Hurricane Hermine is going to hit Jacksonville with all the force and fury of a Category 1 storm, which is actually the weakest form of hurricane there is. And not long after landfall, it'll likely degrade to a tropical storm because storms don't last long over land. I mean, seriously, Floridians don't even get out of bed for anything less than a Cat 2, and I have driven through tropical storms before. So, I don't know why the media is doing this. There's nothing at all to be frightened about, but the news is spinning this up to be the next coming of Katrina. It's as if they think that if we aren't worried or panicking about something, they aren't doing their jobs. I don't know if there's anything special about this, or if it's just first hurricane of the season to make landfall, scurry, but it's all just a big pile of nothing.
How long has it been since we've had any real hurricanes? I mean, we've been going through this. I mean, not that I'm complaining or anything, but hurricanes have been kind of thin on the ground for the last couple years.
Well, I guess it depends on where you're counting. The most significant one was Sandy, however many years ago that was, and the only reason that one was significant was because New York City, despite being a port city, was inexplicably unprepared for a storm coming off the ocean. If Sandy had hit Florida, we would have yawned and rolled over and gone back to sleep. It was a Category 1, it's no big whoop. Prior to that, I may be missing something, but I think we have to go back to 2005 and Katrina.
I think we really have been going through a length of time where there just haven't been much in hurricanes hitting land in America. Now, I think not too long ago, like last year or so, we had quite a few go through the Caribbean and try to sink some islands, but not much has hit the United States proper.
Oh yeah, that happens just about every hurricane season. Some nasty thing comes through and hits Cuba or Haiti or the Yucatan or any combination of the above and does this terrible scouring action. But unless I'm completely missing something, America's been pretty lucky lately for about the past 10 years.
It's all that global warming. So I've been riding my bicycle a whole lot more recently, and it's been a lot of fun. I live so far away from the gym, so I pretty much dropped out. I was paying the money and I wasn't going. It's like 45 minutes to get to the gym to take the spin class, which I loved taking the spin class. But 45 minutes there, plus a half an hour of standing around or 45 minutes of standing around waiting for the class to start. Because if you didn't get there early enough, then you didn't get a ticket. And then take the class, then take a shower, and then another 45 minutes home. That's half my day. I found it was a whole lot easier to pump up the tires on my bike, put on the shorts, and just start riding around the neighborhood.
So how many miles have you ridden on your bicycle?
I don't know. I've been riding 2 and 3 times a week at about 12 miles. So it was about 45 minutes maybe of riding. I just this morning went and did a loop in my car just to check out the roads, make sure it was okay, for a 16-mile loop, which will be about an hour's worth of riding, a little bit more than an hour. That way I get a full hour on the bike. When I looked at the average speeds, I was doing a little bit over 15 miles an hour, which is pretty fast for me. So I figured, if I have about a 16-mile ride, and then on Saturdays, which I've been doing 25 miles, if I up that to about 32, 33, well, it works out that if I have a 25K and a 50K, then I can ride an hour 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I can ride 2 hours on Saturday. So it'll be 5 hours of riding in a week, which is pretty good, actually.
Well, you're going to need to keep track so that in addition to dog walking miles, we can now have bike riding miles.
Well, it is being kept track of. I mean, if I wanted to, I could just click on a couple of buttons here on the computer and I could wait for it to come up. And it says I did 11.77 on Monday, but that doesn't really help us any.
So speaking of dog walking miles, last we heard you were in Galatea, Montana. Have you heard back from their tourist board at all?
No, of course not. Galata, I think it was.
Oh, Galata.
The last full week in August was the 22nd through the 28th, Monday through Sunday. and I rode 11.85, 11.88, 12.06, and 27.75.
So for those folks keeping track at home, update your records accordingly.
When you add all the walking miles in, it was 89.8 total miles, including the bike. Actually, you know what? I could just do this. I'll tell it to give me the bike ride only, and then it'll just tell me how many miles it was in a week. So for the last full week of August, it was 63.5 miles on the bike. Not bad. So Aaron, you demanded, you jumped up and down, waved your hands and said, I get to do this promo.
Well, that's because I'm good friends with Anthony Welsh of Lucky Gunner. I refer to him as my ammo pimp. I don't know if you'll allow that on this podcast. He thinks it's funny.
Well, good. I'm glad he thinks it's funny because it'll stay. So this podcast is being brought to you by our new fine sponsor. Aaron, take it away.
Thanks to Lucky Gunner and Remington for their support of the GunBlog VarietyCast. From Golden Saber to range rounds, get a full lineup of quality Remington ammo that ships fast at luckydunner.com.
All right. So why don't we get started with the rest of our podcast? Aaron, what do we got coming up first?
Well, every lady knows the value of accessories. Beth talks about the perfect accessory for that little black dress.
So I've been thinking, every woman needs a little black dress, right? It's a staple of the female wardrobe, the go-to outfit for many occasions, the tried and true fashion statement that flatters every style, every decade, and just about every frame. The little black dress hangs in the closet ready at a moment's notice to dress up, or to dress down, or to dress to impress. Similarly, doesn't every woman need a little black gun? Maybe a small caliber pistol or revolver? It's such a basic gun. It's a go-to carry for any situation. A tried and true handgun that fits every lifestyle, every age, and just about every ability. Forget that myth that women are weak and unable to handle larger caliber weapons, and disregard the idea that a smaller gun doesn't do enough damage. From first-time gun owners and younger shooters to arthritic grannies or moms on the go, small caliber guns could be more comfortable to carry, smarter to train with, and easier to afford. Let me explain. For a lot of women, the size and weight of a gun makes all the difference in whether she'll actually carry it in a purse or on body, or if she'll just leave it behind in the car. With 3 children in tow, I have enough random items taking up space and adding pounds to my totes and handbags. I really don't want to add the 5-pound behemoth, and it just wouldn't be very practical to pack my .44 Magnum with 7.5-inch barrel. By the same token, it wouldn't be very easy or very attractive to take a weapon that has too much bulk or heft and attempt to conceal it under my clothing. With women's more closely fitted fashions, cuts, and fabrics, it's already difficult enough to conceal a handgun. A woman doesn't want to have to sacrifice fashion and beauty in order to carry, and she doesn't want the outline of a revolver showing through her clothes or creating noticeable, unflattering lumps. For concealed carry, those smaller caliber guns like a 22, 25, or 32 often offer less bulk and less weight and may be a better fit in a woman's hand. Now, I'm 6 feet tall, so my limbs, hands, and fingers are appropriately proportioned. I don't necessarily have to opt for the smaller guns, but I have many quote-unquote vertically challenged friends who don't measure up to my stature, and for them, a bigger gun is just more like a big inconvenience. It's a big problem, actually. And it's important to understand that a woman's not going to want to own, carry, or use a firearm that doesn't fit. On the other hand, it's important not to select a gun that's too light either. A woman might be drawn to more visually appealing guns, whether Tiffany blue, lavender, leopard printed, or bedazzled. But a cute little firearm that fits in the palm of your hand or in the pocket of your clutch may not be the most sensible selection. I kind of prefer to choose a gun that's light enough to carry around but heavy enough to know it's there. A solid gun with a little weight will help you shoot more accurately, and it will typically be constructed better as well. No matter what handgun a woman prefers, she should focus on her ability to carry it comfortably, retrieve it easily, and aim and shoot it accurately. And for training, a smaller caliber gun can offer a very enjoyable and satisfying experience. People are generally more comfortable with it. With less recoil, there's less anticipated flinch, and that equals more accuracy, so people shoot with more confidence when they use a smaller caliber gun. Most women also love a good bargain, but we have a keen understanding that in the long run, the best purchase is the well-made item at a good price rather than the most inexpensive option. It's not wise to march into the gun store seeking out the cheapest revolver you can find, but it is wise to consider the options. And all in all, a smaller caliber gun can be more cost-effective, both for the gun and for the ammunition. Of course, with ammunition costs rising, practicing with a gun can be expensive, but luckily, smaller calibers will help keep more money in your wallet. For a fun, accurate gun that's inexpensive to shoot and train with, the .22 is a very popular choice. And even though I love shooting my 9mm, my .44 Magnum, we almost always bring the .22 along because we can shoot more rounds for a lower cost. So, overall, with less bulk, limited recoil, and lower costs, small caliber handguns are a great option for just about any shooter. But whether a woman chooses to carry a handgun with pink grips or a lip gloss-sized pistol like that little black dress, one size does not fit all. The correct gun is the one that works the best for you. So choose your own. Don't let someone else tell you what to choose. We're all different, and you'll just have to try on a few to see what's best. The one that fits your hand and a caliber you can comfortably control, that you can properly manipulate without error, and that you will practice with until you become proficient is going to be the one for you. And whether it's a backup gun or your carry of choice, you just might be able to accessorize that small caliber handgun with the little black dress. That's all I have for this week. Until next time, stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
Hey guys, this podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlog VarietyCast.com and click on the Donate or Subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. A little help from you is a big help to us.
Oh, that promo just cracks me up every time. So speaking of this podcast running on donations, Aaron, you were just telling me that the new audio equipment that people got for you is just making your life so much easier.
Oh yeah, it is. So I don't know if any of you have actually started subscribing to my YouTube channel, but for those of you who have, you will notice there is this huge leap in quality between the Pocket Box unboxing that I did in August and then the one that I did a month or two prior. And a lot of that has to do with the really cool audio equipment I have been given. So instead of having to either get it all correct in one take or doing multiple takes or just saying, screw it, I'll leave the mess up in there, I can now record things properly, and I've got a good editing suite. And with the audio equipment, I can correct any verbal mistakes I make, just like with the video editor can cut things out. You don't have to see me unpacking things. And it's just made everything so much more awesome. So thank you, everyone. In fact, right now, I am wearing the really cool headphones that were the last thing. And these headphones, okay, they arrived on a satin bed with mirror around the box. This stuff is so swanky. I mean, I felt like I needed an evening gown and a manicure just to pull it out of the box and put it on. But it's really comfortable. The audio quality is fantastic. Thank you all very much. So, Sean, do I have everything I need in order to take over for you so that you can go on vacation?
Nope, just one more thing. And I have currently sitting in my inbox a $25 gift certificate. So I need another $30 or so in order to pick up that last little piece. And that'll give you 4 audio track capability. Currently, you can record on 2 tracks, but with 4 tracks, and we'll probably have to come up with a little bit extra to get you the Soundbite software that I use so that you can play the drop-in sounds. You know, the cool things like,
you are on your own.
And then you can be on your own. Oh, well, I mean, with Weird.
Yeah. And then we can have another episode of The Weirdy and Pony Show.
Oh, dear God. So if you want another episode of The Weirdy and Pony Show, go to gunblogvarietycast.com and click on the donate or subscribe button in the right sidebar. And if you give a lot of money and say, please don't ever do the Weirdy and Pony Show again, well, then maybe that would be a sign.
Maybe.
So how's the shirt donation fund coming, Aaron?
Shirt fund donation is coming well. I believe we have $65. So that will cover 3 t-shirts for you, and that's fine. So we've got the basics covered, but what I really want to do is get a polo shirt for you and for me so that we can be in matching team colors and logos for the introductory dinner on Friday night.
It's going to be kind of funny. I wonder how people are going to take it. I mean, Aaron, I hate you. Why do you make me wear this stuff?
And don't worry, I'm going to be pointing it out to everyone.
Oh, yeah, we know you will. Thanks a lot.
So, speaking of weird or unusual things, Sean, what is the current idiocy perpetuated by felons behaving badly this week?
Well, our story today is man charged with murder after NC grandmother killed in home invasion.
Well, that's pretty horrible.
Dateline, Laurel Hill, North Carolina. The Criminal Investigation Division of the Scotland County Sheriff's Office charged a man Friday after a deadly home invasion in May that left a mother dead. 28-year-old suspect is charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. According to the Scotland County Sheriff's Office, suspect was part of a home invasion that occurred in the Laurel Hill area on May 17. During the home invasion, officers say that suspect shot and killed Kimberly Faye Kelly, 36, who leaves behind 2 sons and 1 granddaughter.
Wait, 36 years old and a grandmother.
Deputies say a second victim living at the residence, Kelly's boyfriend, was also shot, but survived. Kelly was a supervisor with Plastech Industries, according to her obituary. She loved riding her motorcycle and spending time with her family and friends, especially her granddaughter, her obituary said. Kimberly will be remembered as a loving and devoted mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Suspect was placed in the Scotland County Detention Center with no bond due to the nature of the charges.
So, Sean, what kind of a person would callously murder a mother and a grandmother?
At first, it doesn't sound so bad. DWI Level 3, misdemeanor, non-class code, and 2 counts of driver's license revoked, misdemeanor Class 1. But then we get to assault with a deadly weapon, inflicting serious injury, felon Class E.
So clearly what we need here are common sense car control laws to prevent this sort of thing from happening.
Well, if we had some common sense car control laws, he wouldn't have been able to drive from wherever he lived to this person's house.
Oh, he would have had to have walked.
Right, and as we know, walking builds character. Maybe he wouldn't have been the kind of character he was if he'd had to walk everywhere. And naturally, that means we have to take cars away from everybody else too.
Absolutely. Do you have an iPhone? Have you updated the operating system in the last week or so? You'd better. Barron tells us why in
Tech Tips, Tech Tips, Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with the Barron. Barron, a couple of days ago I saw several articles saying, oh my God, update your iPhone immediately. What were they so excited about?
Well, Sean, 3 different vulnerabilities were found in use in the wild. When combined, your phone would be, how shall we say, pwned. I've mentioned previously about zero-day exploits. That's where an exploit in the field is found the same day as the vulnerability it's targeting. To put a little perspective, if you discover a zero-day exploit for iOS, it's worth $1 million on the black market. The package of exploits, in this case, had 3.
Package where it was found? Why do I have a feeling there's some sort of spy story going on behind this?
Well, because there is. This was all discovered after a human rights activist in the United Arab Emirates received a text message containing a link. The text arrived from an unknown number. Now, this guy either has some awesome friends, like me, or listens to this podcast because he didn't tap the link. You shouldn't tap on unknown links, folks. It's how bad things like your phone getting pwned happens. He instead sent the link to a Canadian security research organization called Citizen Lab. Through their reverse engineering of the payload, they were able to find the exploits in iOS. To put in perspective how bad these exploits are, this would have been a single-tap jailbreak. Now, I know that everyone who has ever watched hacker movies thinks it's common for people to click one link or type in one command and suddenly get pwned. But in the real world, that's incredibly hard to do. A single-tap jailbreak is actually a fairly complex thing to happen.
Jailbreak, that's like when you're God on your phone, right? I remember Linoge talking about doing that to his Android.
That's correct, Sean. In the world of servers, it's the equivalent of getting root. You are God, free to do as you wish, unhindered by any security that's been put into the system. Now, within 10 days, Apple had released iOS 9.3.5, and the story of Trident went public. Who was actually responsible for this targeted attack is unknown, but most everyone suspects that there was a nation-state behind it.
So you're saying that they had a really good reason to tell us to update our iPhones immediately?
That's exactly right, Sean. If you have an Apple device and have not updated to 9.3.5, you should. They released updates for all devices going all the way back to the iPhone 4S. So remember, kids, when a software update comes out, especially security related, install it. You'll be doing yourself and others a huge favor.
All right, Barron. It was good to talk with you, and I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
Barron still blogs at the-minuteman.org.
So the main topic segment, the Ruger American Rifle at Walmart.
At Walmart, wow. How much are they going for?
It's kind of funny. A couple of days ago, I'm checking Facebook in the morning, and PDB posts on Facebook something along the lines of, hey, before you buy some cheap Chinese knockoff scope, go and buy this scope, the Leupold VX1. It's at Optics Planet. You can get a $15 off discount code here, and Leupold's giving you $50 for a mail-in rebate. So free shipping, you're going to get this Leupold scope for all of $135.
Run like you stole it.
Yeah, that sounds cool, right? It's a 3x9 variable power duplex reticle scope. Nice scope made by Leupold. You know, they got a name behind them. They will back up their stuff. So you're not getting some cheap Chinese knockoff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody says, hey, you know what? That would be a great scope for these Ruger American rifles that they're blowing out at Walmart for $200. And the Ruger American rifle, I think, is like $539 MSRP, but you can get them if you look really hard for about $400.
Yeah, $400, $350. We talked about this when I did the review of the Archangel stock for the Mosin Nagant, and you asked me, well, why would anyone get that when you could get a Ruger Predator instead? And I said, well, that's a good question, because I didn't have one when I first got the Mosin.
Right. Well, what was interesting is I've actually done some looking, and $350 is distributor pricing. If you're getting your hands on a Ruger American for $350, basically whoever's selling it to you is not making a profit. And Walmart's blowing these things out the door for $200. I'm like, that can't be right. There's no way. Also, in addition to the Ruger American, they were blowing out some 4570s. I think it was a Marlin 1895. I can't remember what it was, for $300. But $200 for a reasonably good bolt gun.
So what's wrong with these that they're selling them for so low? I mean, are they damaged? Are they doing just this short sale to get ready for hunting season? What's the catch here?
I don't know. I could find nothing wrong with the rifles. I mean, I'm no expert or anything. Now, remember I taught John, the LGBT person in this area, I taught John how to shoot. John went running out and bought a handgun and getting this concealed handgun permit, all that stuff.
You enabler, you.
John's a farmer. And John farms pigs. Well, sometimes you got to put the pig down so that you can turn it into meat, right?
I believe the proper term is harvesting.
And John has been using an old bolt action 22 for this, which is marginal. On a good day when everything's sun is shining right, you know, and marginal. It's like, it's just a bad plan. And so one of the first things that John says was, what kind of rifle should I get? You know, should I get something a little bit bigger? Will I be able to use my handgun to do this instead? I said, well, I guess the 9mm is better than a 22, so it can't be that can't be bad. Well, this came up. I'm like, hey, John, check this out. Remember that rifle we saw on the wall and we were talking about? Yeah, well, you can get something just like it for $200. Well, yesterday I get a phone call. Hey, I'm standing at the desk looking at these guns in Walmart. Do I want the 243 or do I want the 30-06? I'm like, get the 243.
Well, hell, at that price, why not get both?
Well, yeah, but neither John nor I are made of money, so you can relate to this, right?
Oh, absolutely. I just assume everyone else has more money than I do.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing about having money is that for all normal people, your bills will expand to meet the available capital, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, so we don't have just money laying about. The only reason actually I didn't pick up one of these rifles myself is because I need one that is a threaded barrel, 30 caliber or less. They make the Predator model, which has a whole bunch of different calibers, and they make the one that I want, which is the Ranch in 300 Blackout. And all of the Predators and the Ranch models are threaded for a suppressor. And what I really want is a bolt gun to put my suppressor on so that I can hunt deer with it. So 300 Blackout is exactly what I want. 16 1/10 of an inch barrel, threaded already for the suppressor I have. I could throw a $140 scope on it, and the whole rifle, scope, everything wouldn't even cost as much as the suppressor did. Well, I posted it up. I said, hey, check this out. I went down, I took a look at the Walmart. They've got them at my Walmart. Check your Walmart. And Michael Bain pops up on my Facebook feed. The Ruger American is one heck of a deal, he says. We had a 30-06 in Africa, and everybody wanted to shoot it. We've used 6.5 Creedmoor at FTW out to 1,000 yards. Now, a $400 street price gun at 1,000 yards.
What's FTW?
FTW Ranch, I think it's called. It's a range that he goes to. I think it's in Texas. I'm not sure. But it's a long-range hunting, long-range sniper training class school thing.
Training class school thing. I love how precise you are.
Well, I don't want everybody to think I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I've conveyed that I really don't know, right?
Okay.
FTW, look it up. If you want to learn how to shoot long range, I know they'll teach you. He continues with, for all those preppers out there who think that the Mosin Nagant is the ideal backup bolt gun, forget it. Sprint to Walmart and buy a $200 30-06 or heck, a 243, one heck of a caliber. Now, if you're not hunting anything bigger than a white-tailed deer, get the 243. I have a 243, a Remington Model 700 BDL. It's the pretty shiny special one. It's beautiful. With a 3x9 Burris on it that I got when I was 15 years old. My dad has shot woodchucks at 400 yards with this stupid thing. I'm like blowing woodchucks up at 400 yards in, and my wife can tell you, there's never been a time where it wasn't blowing at least 15 miles an hour crosswind on him while he's out there. I mean, I don't think my wife has ever been to my father's house where the wind dropped below 15 miles an hour. And he's out there at 400 yards taking out woodchucks with a variable power 3x9 duplex reticle scope. There's no drops on it. There's no, little hash marks or anything like that. He's just like Kentucky windaging it. Bam! Dead woodchuck. And it'll go all the way up to deer. And so unless you're hunting something bigger than deer, I wouldn't get anything bigger than a 243.
So for $335 plus whatever tax and transfer and 447.3 fees are involved. So I don't know, let's say $350. You can have a complete rifle with an excellent scope and an excellent pedigree as attested to by Michael Bain.
It's hard to say no to that.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, the only reason I did not buy one, put it on a credit card, and then beg my wife for forgiveness later was because they're selling the standard model, not either the Predator or the Ranch that has the threaded barrel that I need for my silencer.
I'm not saying no to it. I'm saying not right now, because I'm saving up for that Tampa trip and then other things. But if they are still selling these rifles for that price in December, I'm going to get some Christmas money and buy me one.
I was in Walmart. I've been to a couple of them because, of course, I'm trolling the Walmarts looking. Maybe they'll just happen to have the one I want. And they seem to have everything in the rifle rack marked down. I don't know what's going on. Are they selling out of all their rifles just to stop selling rifles? Or are they just blowing out rifles and shotguns and stuff just to get people in the door? I have no idea what they're doing. There's no earthly reason they should be selling $350 distributor price rifles for $200. They have to be taking a bath on this. I don't know why they're doing it, but run straight down to Walmart and pick one up. So this week on The Bridge, Tiffany tells us why it might not be the best plan to broadcast the fact that you're a concealed carrier.
Hi, Sean. Hi, Aaron. How are you guys doing today? Well, I certainly missed you guys while I was gone. I hope you didn't have too much fun in my absence, but I'm back and I had something else that I wanted to talk to you about and talk to our listeners about. One of the reasons I haven't been able to record lately is because, as Sean mentioned in the last episode, I've been buried in work having to do with the start of the new school year at the university where I teach. And one of the things that always happens with every new semester is all the faculty have to attend meetings upon meetings upon meetings. Interestingly, one of our more, shall we say, colorful meetings of this semester has been our annual crisis management seminar. And usually this has to do with, duck and cover, what to do in an earthquake. And lately, they've talked a lot about active shooter scenarios since that's all the buzz on campuses, even though it's statistically unlikely to happen. But even more specifically, this semester, the conversation centered around the new campus carry law in Tennessee.
WREG's Katie Rufner talked with students today about Tennessee campus carry and how safe or sorry they'll be to see workers from the custodial staff all the way to the presidential suite being potentially armed.
Some students we talked to are torn about the issue. Some told us it would actually make them feel safer. Others say they're just uncomfortable with the idea of guns on campus.
I don't really agree with it overall, just because classrooms are like confined spaces and it just It's a little unnerving.
It'd be just fine for me.
Packing professors. Under the new state law, full-time faculty and staff members with valid handgun carry permits will be able to carry on campus, but they'll have to keep those weapons concealed and notify the law enforcement responsible for their campuses.
This law took effect July 1, and I think I've probably talked about it a couple of times here and talked about it on my blog. And so this was my first time attending a meeting with a bunch of other faculty members where they had the chance to voice their opinions publicly since the law took effect. And as you might imagine, most universities are pretty non-permissive environments. And the university where I work is no exception. And so there was quite a bit of alarm expressed by many members of academia. I thought it was particularly ironic that so many of the folks who were against the bill were proposing ways to voice their righteous indignation in a public manner and sort of rise up in a grassroots kind of opposition and almost in a confrontational manner against the folks who are in favor of this bill or the campus carry law. I thought that was ironic because whoever in the room might have been armed at the time, and I won't mention any names, but those were the folks who were completely silent and absolutely non-confrontational. And yet all of the anti-gun folks were the ones who were proposing confronting people. You know, there was one person who said, I'm going to post a sign on my office and in all my classes saying, no guns allowed here, in a kind of public defiance of this law, even though under the law, any such sign would have been utterly unenforceable and could be legally ignored by a full-time faculty member who was carrying legally under this law. So I just thought, you folks seem to be so upset by potential confrontation that you expect to erupt from these violent, awful, vile gun carriers, and yet they're sitting quietly in this meeting, and you guys, the ones who were anti-gun, are the ones proposing, sparking all this confrontation. I just thought that was really odd. But I apologize for the for the tangent, because that's actually not what I wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about is gray man theory. And it came to mind in this meeting because there was one woman, one of the very few, who didn't seem to be quite so opposed to the bill or to the law. And in fact, she started posing all of these questions about what the law allowed her to do. Clearly, she was a gun owner. She made no attempt to hide that fact. But then she started asking questions in the manner that I tend to call the what if brainstormer. We've all had this student in our classes. If you're a firearms instructor, then you'll know what I'm talking about. The what if brainstormer is the person whose hand shoots up in the middle of the legal lecture in your class and starts saying, well, what if this and what if that? And can I do this? And can I do that? So that's what this woman was doing in this meeting, which was attended by, scores, if not 100 or so faculty members. And she goes, well, okay, so under this law, I can take my gun to so-and-so building, and I can take my gun to so-and-so building on campus. Well, what if I'm going to pick up my kid at the daycare? Or can I take my gun here? Or if I've got my gun here? And she just went on and on and on in this fashion. And I'm just kind of putting my head in my hand like, oh my goodness, lady, do you not realize there is actually a confidentiality clause in the law itself, which says that anyone who is carrying is permitted to do so confidentially? I think that's a really important aspect of the law because you don't want to end up at odds with your boss who happens to be anti-gun because your boss knows that you're carrying. But this woman apparently didn't appreciate the importance of that confidentiality and effectively outed herself in a full auditorium of faculty members, the vast majority of whom are anti-gun. It just reminded me about gray man, and I thought I would talk to our listeners about that, especially to those who may be new to gun ownership or to carrying. There are all kinds of reasons why you will want to be concealed if you're going to carry a gun, and why you will not want to advertise the fact that you're carrying a gun. First of all, let me just back up for a moment. I think that the what if brainstormer is falling victim to a bit of intellectual laziness by trying to tick off every remotely possible scenario in which her gun may come into play and trying to put together the answer to that question in advance. There's a term for that in criminal law jurisprudence. It's called premeditation. So you want to be careful about just how thoroughly you kind of plan out all of your future uses of your firearm. Obviously, you want to think about things in advance and you do want to make plans. I'm certainly not saying that plans are bad, but there's just no way for you to predict every possible circumstance and know in advance what you would do in that circumstance. There are just too many factors. The number of potential permutations of this situation that you might find yourself in are just too numerous to count. They're infinite, in fact. So I think the better way to approach that, instead of having your list of what do I do in this situation and what do I do in this situation, instead of going about it that way, just understand more generally that if you need to use your gun in self-defense, it'll be painfully obvious. It's kind of like you can't be a little bit pregnant, right? Either you absolutely need your gun or you don't. And I think trying to put together a list of times when you might need your gun or places when you can carry your gun, I think that might be cutting corners in a way that could be potentially dangerous. But getting back to why this person, in my opinion, shouldn't have been so eager to announce to everyone that she's carrying in all of these different buildings on campus has to do with tactics more so than anything else, in my opinion. So for one thing, you are losing the element of surprise, which is a very useful tool to have if you should ever find yourself in a personal defense situation. Everybody knows you got a gun, so you are not able to reset the OODA loop, as we say in our classes, with your attacker. Number two, you're going to automatically draw to yourself a great deal of unnecessary attention, scrutiny, criticism, right? Again, this is the whole purpose of the confidentiality clause in the law. So you don't want to do that. You'd rather be the gray man or the gray person, gray woman in this case, especially in a non-permissive environment, which even though we have this new campus carry law, rest assured, a public university is still very much a non-permissive environment, all right? And the other thing is, and this is me sort of getting on my soapbox of personal privilege here, but to me, in my opinion, carrying a weapon should be an extremely humbling experience. It is not a Billy Badass badge, right? Anybody who feels, suddenly invincible when they strap on their gun is going about the whole process wrong, in my opinion. Instead, when you put on your firearm and go out into the world with the power of deadly force on your person, you should be even more vigilant, even more hesitant to get into confrontations, even more humble, even more anxious to avoid than you ordinarily would be. It's sort of what Beth was talking about in our last episode with Liz Lazara about, I think Liz mentioned, I think she said the line between self-defense and vigilantism, right? This is what we want to avoid. When you appear to be proactively planning for your forthcoming self-defense event with your firearm in a way that almost makes you seem anxious to put that gun into play, I think you're building a potentially hurtful narrative around yourself that is now recorded in the public sphere. So if that poor woman were to ever have to use her firearm, everybody who was in that meeting is going to be put on the stand to talk about how eager she was to have it with her and use it. And she may be completely justified in that, but the way she worded it could be twisted and spun in a way that works to her disadvantage later on. So I say all of that to remind folks, try and stay below the radar about the fact that you're carrying your gun. It's not the kind of thing that you want to just advertise all over everywhere. One, because it gives the false impression that you're eager to shoot somebody, right? And we as gun owners, we don't want to come across that way. And two, you put yourself at any number of tactical disadvantages by broadcasting that all over Front Street, okay? So I hope that helps. And if I ever run into that woman on campus, then maybe I'll work up the nerve to kind of pull her aside and have a conversation with her. Till then, I hope this is useful. Thank you for listening, and it's good to be back. I will see you all next week. Stay safe and keep it centered and even.
You can follow Tiffany at frontsightpress.com.
And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette.
Come on, every pony. It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette.
So, Sean, when I say survival television, you probably think of Survivor, don't you?
Well, yeah, that or Doomsday Preppers or any number of really stupid things that they've put on TV over the years.
Well, yeah, that's to be expected. Well, the fact of the matter is that Survivor isn't survival television, at least not as far as I'm concerned. It's basically an enforced diet and exercise program with a lot of ridiculous drama added. So when I say survival television, I mean good TV. The kind where the people aren't idiots and hopefully you learn something from watching. So here are my current favorite survival TV programs. 1. Anything with Les Stroud. Now, Les Stroud is also known as Survivor Man, and he is the real deal as far as I'm concerned. He basically started the survival TV genre back in the early 2000s, and almost all of his shows have involved him filming himself going into the wilderness with a fixed amount of gear, usually the kind of stuff that a person might have with them when confronted with an emergency, and perhaps supplemented with 1 or 2 survival or camping gimmicks he found on a shelf and wanted to test. Watching Les, you know that survival isn't easy. In fact, it's quite hard, and he shows you how difficult it can be. Also, many times he gets the camera up close so you can actually see the techniques he's using to build a trap or start a fire or do something else. Unfortunately, Les doesn't make many shows these days. He's getting old, and roughing it is a young man's game, but he does occasionally make new episodes with his son Logan, and the show is now called Survivor Man and Son. And of course, you can still catch Les's older shows on the Discovery or Science Channel. Number 2, Alone. This is on the Discovery Channel, and the premise is that 10 highly trained survivalists and outdoorsmen are taken to a location and isolated not just from the world, but from each other, and are essentially told, survive for as long as you can. The last one standing gets $500,000. And when I say for as long as you can, the people going into the show are told, you need to be able to survive for yourself up to a year. Now, the past 2 seasons have been set on Vancouver Island, where it is so wet and rainy that the contestants always have trouble making or maintaining fires. However, next season they're doing things a little bit differently. They're going to be in Patagonia in South America, which ought to prove interesting and provide a whole new set of problems. Now, what I think is most interesting about the series is seeing how the isolation affects the contestants. Most of them go at least a little crazy during their time alone in the wilderness, and a few just can't handle it and tap out within the first week. And as for how long they were out there, the first season winner lasted 56 days, and the second season winner was 66 days. Towards the end, they'd both lost a lot of weight and had a wild look in their eyes. The finalists are almost always in emotional pain from isolation and missing their families, and it's a great reality check for preppers who think that post-SHTF they'll just go in the woods and survive there. Humans are social animals, and loneliness will kill you as surely as starvation will, so unless you're a complete sociopath who can't stand other people, you need to admit that having other people around you will be a requirement for survival. 3. Naked and Afraid XL. This is the one you've probably heard of before, as it's the most sensationalist of the 3. The original series, plain old Naked and Afraid, was tough enough. 1 man and 1 woman are dropped into a survival situation quite literally naked, and the only gear they have are very minimal. A map, and usually a knife, a fire starter, and sometimes a pot to boil water in. They have to survive 21 days before hiking to an extraction point, and many of the contestants either tap out or are medically disqualified. It's a good show, but compressing 21 days of survival into a single hour of TV doesn't do much for me. On the other hand, the spin-off, XL, is something I find far more interesting, where 12 previous Naked and Afraid contestants, 6 men and 6 women, are divided into 4 groups of 3 and are told they need to survive for 40 days before extraction. They each have a knife and a personal survival item, and each team has a map. And in both seasons, the groups have met up and formed a tribe because that makes primitive survival a lot easier. Of course, this also means that conflict and drama is bound to happen because that's just how group dynamics are, and they're made worse by a lack of privacy and comforts. And that doesn't even touch on the obligatory jerk that the producers like putting in, who is guaranteed to cause trouble. Last season, one of the contestants had a tantrum and decided to throw away not just her survival tools, but also the tools for everyone else in the group before tapping out. So if you want a good idea of what your prepper tribe is going to be like while trying to survive in an emergency or post-SHTF, watch this show. You may do better than they did because, unlike them, you'll actually get to choose who will be in your group, but that doesn't mean trouble and drama won't exist. I wrote a blog post about this last year and posed the question, if someone from your prepper tribe threw a similar tantrum and sabotaged group supplies, how would you deal with it? It's an interesting thought exercise, and one I encourage all preppers to consider, and you can find a link to that post in the show notes. And finally, dual survival. Dual survival, also on Discovery, as you can guess, I watch a lot of Discovery Channel, has had a muddied past with various hosts either quitting or being fired for having faked their military records. And it was also filled with drama, as the central premise was grizzled military veteran teams up with barefoot hippie to see whose survival training is better. But this current version has jettisoned both the conflict and the drama by pairing two veterans of Naked and Afraid XL, who have an excellent bond because they survived together, and putting them in survival situations that ordinary people might find themselves in, like having their dune buggy run out of gas far from civilization. Only this time, the two get to wear clothes. And in many ways, dual survival is the updated version of Les Stroud's show. Two people who are expert survivalists show the viewer what to do if they ever find themselves in an emergency. And unlike both Alone and Naked and Afraid XL, whose seasons have already ended for the year, Dual Survival has just started. You can watch it on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. on Discovery Channel. All of these shows are good forms of survival television, and if you're the kind of person who gets bored easily, you can have them on while you check your bug-out bags, or sharpen knives, or practice tying knots, and then just pay attention to the screen when something important happens. But regardless of how you watch, I recommend you check them all out.
Not only can you subscribe or donate to the podcast, you can also make a contribution to the LGBT Training Ammo Fund. Go to gunblogvarietycast.com and click on the LGBT Training Ammo Fund donation button in the right sidebar. I'll use this money to pay for range fees, targets, and yes, ammo for the people I teach. And thanks for your support. This week, Weird goes back to the Massachusetts Attorney General in an exclusive Fox interview where she tells all of us what color the sky is on her world in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. So hey, Weird, what do you got for me this week?
So since I'm still under the boot of the bizarre and getting more bizarre interpretation of Massachusetts' long-standing assault weapons ban, I can't leave Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey alone when she presents a proverbial target. Recently, she appeared on Fox 25 in Boston for an exclusive interview about her actions on the assault weapons ban. Let's start out with this.
We have seen too many mass shootings. Last year alone, Sharman, more mass shootings than calendar days.
This was the actual lead into the interview. Okay, we've discussed that this statistic is completely bogus, even using the more loose definitions of mass shooting. What we haven't talked about is that for a month straight, she's now been leading with this fact. In every interview, press conference, she's probably even telling her server this before she gives her order at a restaurant. She's had more than enough time to vet this untruth. Either she didn't and she's insanely lazy and stupid, or she knows it's a lie and she wants to lead with some solid misdirection. I know what I think it is.
The Gun Owners Action League calls this a political play by a zealous anti-gun politician looking to advance her political career. Are they right?
Absolutely not. Couldn't be further from the truth.
You're not trying to score political points here.
I'm trying to do my job.
Doing your job, Maura? Again, this was a long-standing law that was directly derived from the 10-year assault weapons ban that we had at the federal level. All the anti-gun minds in the country and all the anti-gun minds in this state for a total of 22 years couldn't see what you apparently see. Now the question for the rest of us is Maura Healey crazy or lying?
Pro-gun rights activists are saying, hey, wait a minute, you're not enforcing the law, you're interpreting the law to fit your own political purposes. What do you say to that?
They're wrong. They're absolutely wrong.
So for those who read my blog, we've seen my coverage on the recent clarification letter that does anything but. It's nice to point out that no, she's not going to consider any Massachusetts-approved handguns assault weapons. That's mighty kind of her. She also clarifies that no manually operated rifles and shotguns are covered by this law, as well as firearms that use fixed magazines, which is good because the law specifically exempts them. It also says that Mini 14 and M1A rifles are exempted from the assault weapons ban, as well as any .22 rimfire rifle. Well, it was first written as .22 caliber, which was edited after a few days. Still, I've looked over the text of the federal law as well as the Massachusetts law, and nowhere is caliber mentioned, nor does it mention the blanket exemptions on these rifles. If she's not rewriting the law, where is she getting this? We can make an argument that a Colt MT6520 carbine is a copy of the Colt AR-15 that was specifically mentioned in the ban, though legal minds on both sides agreed that the removal of the named features from the ban on this rifle alters it enough that it is similar, but not a copy. But you can't go talking about stuff that just isn't there.
Despite Massachusetts' assault weapons ban, she found 10,000 copycat-style weapons had been sold in this state last year alone.
Now here's an interesting point. Gun dealers and manufacturers, as well as the bulk of the elected officials, asked AG Healey to compile a list of banned or legal guns to be sold in the state just so we can orient ourselves. Healey has refused to even identify illegal or legal guns and constantly stipulates that every listing she's given is not inclusive. So how does she know how many illegal ones were sold?
I asked the Attorney General why she didn't just go through lawmakers. She says she didn't need their approval. This was an announcement that was made just a couple days before the legislature went into recess.
There was no need. This is the existing law.
First, we've already established that Healey has overstepped her authority, thanks to her referencing things that are not in the text of the law she's interpreting. Also, do you think it's a coincidence that she went around lawmakers, given that so many of them have expressed dissatisfaction with her actions? Really, anti-gun laws have been languishing in committee here in Massachusetts for almost as long as the assault weapons law has been on the books. It's currently politically impossible to pass an anti-gun law through legal processes, so she's simply rewritten anti-gun law illegally.
Maura Healey says she's not looking to arrest any law-abiding gun owners who bought a copycat before her announcement.
But she could if she wanted to. See, by claiming an existing law says something it doesn't say, anybody who is following the law to the letter, but not to the reinterpretation that was completely made up, is a criminal and technically could be arrested at any time so long as the statute of limitations hasn't been exceeded. I'm sorry, AG Healey, but you're acting in dishonest and frankly criminal fashion. Can you blame me for not taking you at your word?
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on The Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
The plug of the week. Apparently you've got something for us that's a little bit off the beaten path. What do you got?
Well, I have two delightful series of books by an author that I just adore. Her name is Gail Carriger, and the two series are the Parasol, Protectorate, and Finishing School series. Now, Sean, I understand that you are a big fan of Downton Abbey.
Well, I was until it ended. Jerks.
Well, Parasol Protectorate is a little bit of a costume drama, and I think you would enjoy that. The central premise is it's Victorian England, but steampunk technology exists, meaning there's lots of airships, and also supernaturals not only exist, but they have integrated themselves into the society.
So they're not like a secret or something?
No. As a matter of fact, it is considered prestigious to be a vampire or a werewolf.
They're not monsters?
Well, they're kind of monstrous at times, but it's all done for the good of the Empire. Vampires feed, but they take care not to kill people by feeding from them, and any werewolf must join Queen Victoria's army and go off and help expand the Empire. So they've all been integrated, and in fact, the chief werewolf and chief vampire are actually advisors to Queen Victoria's shadow cabinet. And the first series, called the Parasol Protectorate, features the adventures of Alexia Terabati, and Alexia has a power of her own. It's not supernatural, it's preternatural. And with a touch, she can turn supernatural creatures human. And so what we have is a little bit of a romance, a little bit of a costume drama, a little bit fantasy, a little bit steampunk. As Alexia goes about her life, figuring out what it is to be a preternatural, trying to fit in with polite society, trying to fend off the attention of a certain werewolf lord who has taken an interest in her. And it's called the Parasol Protectorate because, like a proper lady, she has a parasol with her, and hers is, shall we say, reinforced. And it starts off just being long and heavy with a wooden tip. And in later episodes, it turns into a gadget almost akin to a James Bond device. And so she is very prim and very proper, and yet can dispatch certain rogue elements with ladylike style and charm. And I haven't even gotten into the central premise of the first novel, and there are mad scientists, and there are automatons, and there are ghosts, and it's just lovely. I have listened to the audiobooks because I don't have a lot of time to read, but if I'm in the car or I'm doing work around the house, I can listen to an audiobook, and they are narrated either by British ladies or ladies who can give a very good British accent, and that just adds more to it to me. Hearing it done in a proper English accent just really sets the stage. So that's the first series. The Finishing School series is a prequel of sorts. It's set 20 years previous, and while some characters from the original series appear in it, they aren't necessarily the main characters. It's just well, here's what happened previously. And Finishing School involves the adventures of a young lady. She's 14 years old at the first book. Her name is Sophronia Temenic, and she is a tomboy and the absolute terror of her mother, who decides to send her off to a prestigious finishing school, Madame Geraldine's School for Ladies of Quality. And it turns out that while this finishing school does indeed teach her manners, grace, and charm, it is also teaching her how to be a spy and an assassin. And so in order to finish, a young lady has to perform a task set before them by the instructors. And it might be stealing a secret. It might be smuggling someone across the border. It might be killing someone. So it's sort of like Harry Potter, a little bit like X-Men, in that you've got a character who is still new and learning things. And again, it's set against the backdrop of this steampunk setting, because Madame Geraldine's school is set aboard a dirigible which floats over Dartmoor. And both of these series are just fun. There's not a lot of brooding. There's enough angst and romance to keep your interest, but it doesn't belabor any one point. And so if you are a fan of any of these genres, I recommend that you check them out. They are a blast to read, and I think you'll really enjoy them.
I think I've actually heard of Finishing School before. One of the podcasts I listened to, they talked to somebody about something like that. It was like a spy school, but it wasn't really obviously a spy school.
Yeah.
It sounded very interesting, and you say it's obviously pretty good, so I should probably check that out.
Yeah, I really think you'll like it. And one final note, even though Finishing School is technically a prequel, sort of kinda, to the setting, so far as I can tell, and I haven't finished Finishing School yet, I'm about halfway through the third book. I'm pretty sure you can read them in either order, and it's not going to damage the enjoyment of the other.
So it's not so much a prequel as it is a in the same setting sort of situation.
Yeah, it's more of a prequel to the setting as opposed to the prequel to the characters. So if you read Finishing School first, when the characters pop up in Parasol Protectorate, you'll go, aha, I know what's going on here. But if you read Parasol Protectorate first and then you read Finishing School, you'll go, oh, so now I see how this character got that way.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, that's our show for the week. Remember that the GunBlog VarietyCast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Find the show notes at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 107.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the GunBlog VarietyCast. Music courtesy of Rob Allen at blog.roballen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. This podcast is made possible by the Firearms Policy Coalition and by contributions from listeners like you. This is a URS production.